Good evening. This is the CPC meeting, the Community Preservation Committee meeting on February 21st at 7 o'clock in the evening, 2023. So we're taking a roll call. Sarah Grimwood.
Sarah Grimwood, appointee of the Natural Resources Commission.
Thank you very much. Charles.
Charles Phillips, appointee of the Housing Authority.
Thank you. Paul.
Paul Bohm, appointee of Recreation Commission.
Thank you. And Nancy.
Nancy Nelson, Historical Commission appointee.
Thank you. And Diane Proctor, Select Board appointee. I see we have a lot of visitors here. Oh, wait, John
John Kratzley, Select Board appointee. Hi, everyone.
Yay. Hi, John.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
The Mardi Gras party tonight. So
Okay. A Mardi Gras. I'd forgotten that's what it was. And we have Tom and Melissa and Peter and Dee and Keith and Doug with us today. And we welcome you all. Hi, Peter. We welcome you all to this meeting. We begin with a discussion of the 22 annual town meeting and the FinCom public hearing on March 1st, 2022. And do you want to show us the slides so we can just quickly go through them?
Okay, just 1 minute.
That presentation will take place on March 1st in the evening at Town Hall. And we'll go through these slides that Anne has so beautifully put together. As you know, we really have 3 articles. 2 of them are rather, to some degree, perfunctory, but then they're the more complicated one, which represents the good work we have done all fall. So we see the recommendations for CPA funding in Warrant Article 26. And then we can keep going. The Regional Housing Services Program. And then the Assabet River Bluff Housing Project. And then the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Project. And then the Open Space and Recreation Plan, which is, as you know, a consultant study on the open space and recreation opportunities in the town of Concord. And then Warner's Pond. I'm going to stop on this one because we have a lot to discuss about this when we get to later in the agenda. Because there's much that is meant to be happening in the town before we can even really support this or go forward, because if we all remember, our understanding is that there would be a series of public hearings and a massive survey and at least 1 public hearing for the town of Concord to discuss how to go forward with this particular project. So right now it sits to some degree in abeyance until we learn, how that's going forward. Okay. And the cemeteries, the stone wall restoration, and the Civil War Soldiers Monument Conservation and Preservation Project, which is quite remarkable, as you all remember. The Concord Historic Preservation Plan, and the Preservation, Conservation, and Historic Town Plans to provide for the conservation treatment and digitization. Remember, we went to the townhouse and we saw the digitization of many of the plans of Concord Waterworks and other things, all of which we hope will become part of our historic preservation. And then the CPC staff and technical support. Does anybody have any questions about any of those except for the Warner's Pond going forward? Okay, hearing none. Anne, I just want to thank you for getting that organized. They're just beautiful. And we will present them. And at the public hearing, we sometimes learn from citizens in attendance that there's something about the presentation that provokes questions or worries or concerns of one kind or another. And so we will then fold whatever those concerns or questions are into the way we present the projects. Any other comments about those before we proceed? Okay. Then we look at some project update. Oh, Dee Ortney, you have a question. Hi, Dee. Hello.
unmute myself and open this up. Hi, thank you very much for reviewing those real quickly. And I know that you're going to be meeting with the FinCom on March 1st. I think some of the questions that you can anticipate, just as a heads up,
Good.
are going to be about Warner's Pond.
Yes.
There will also be questions on how much money has the CPC allocated to projects, and those projects are still not, I don't want to say not completed, but they haven't been initiated.
Right. So
So how much
uninitiated,
money is out there that has been allocated, but those projects have not started?
right. Uninitiated projects that sit right now in abeyance, and those,
Yep.
that's an important question, and we'll have that. I know Anne is listening, and I know we'll do our best to have that at the ready. Dee, thank you for that heads up.
Okay,
Because it remains an important question. Thank you very much.
you're welcome. I think those are the only two major ones that I've heard from the
Okay.
citizenry.
Well, we thank you. We thank you so much for that.
Okay,
Any other public comment or any other comments? Dee, you're flipping around and you're saying, Keith, good evening.
I don't.
Oh, hi Diane, and hello, CPC members. Keith Bergman, Chair of the Concord Municipal Affordable Housing Trust, and I will lower my hand. There we go. I saw on your materials for tonight's meeting that you had presentations not only on the Omnibus Article 26, but also on others, and including Article 28, which is one of the two articles that in the warrant that proposes to transfer funds to the Affordable Housing Trust.
That's right.
And so if there's discussion about that article, I just want to share that the trust has prepared some supplemental slides since we've got two articles, one for CPC, the other from the select board that total over $2 million. We've prepared some supplemental slides that we'll be discussing at our trust meeting tomorrow night. And it's just in an effort to share with the public. It'll be, it's a FinCom meeting and we haven't met with them in a while, but to sort of explain in general what the trust has been up to, where what projects have money's been spent on. We've been given $2 million over in recent years. We've got a balance of just under 1 million. The 2 million that's proposed to be transferred to us at town meeting would give us 3 million. And as it happens, the two highest priority projects, Assabet River Bluff, bringing it to completion, and if something might happen at Junction Village, where
Right.
there's discussion there, that's going to take up probably all of the funds that we have. And so we just wanted to share that update with you and with the public. And thanks so much we appreciate your support so much.
Well, thank you so much. I wonder if, Anne, if you could give Keith permission to share, and maybe you would share your screen, Keith, and share with this committee.
Sure, be
Uh,
happy to. I don't, okay, there we go, share.
You're now a co-host. This is perfect.
All right, very good. All right, so these are some supplemental slides that we've prepared, and we'll be discussing them tomorrow. As a general update, the trust, as you know, was created in 2019. We're seeking state legislative authority so that for real estate transfer fee and building permit surcharge, which town meeting voted again last month to refile, so that we would have dedicated funding sources that are not dependent upon the property tax. That's the long-term vision. We don't want to have to rely on town funds. But in the meantime,
And Keith, can you explain
Yes.
your home rule petitions, right? Which we voted in favor of at town meeting and now just need the approval of the state legislature. Am I right?
That's exactly correct. I wish I could say it just needs that, but it will need that plus a huge amount of political pressure to have it happen. And there's also a statewide bill that's under consideration for a real estate transfer fee. So we're going at this idea of an outside funding source from a number of directions.
And
In the
Keith,
meantime,
I know
yeah.
Simon Catalda has in fact forwarded these at the state legislative level. So
That's right. The 2 home rule petitions have been filed by our 3 legislators, Representatives Cataldo and Gentile and Senator Barrett. All 3 of those legislators also support the statewide bill, have signed on as co-sponsors of the statewide real estate
absolutely.
transfer fee, and we're happy for their support. In the meantime, we have been getting annual town meeting appropriations over the last 4 years, but we're not asking for one this year. And I think that's significant, that we received a total of $2 million over the last 4 town meetings, but with the ability to transfer funds from prior appropriations for Christopher Heights, to have those balances transferred into the trust. We're not seeking any other, there's a lot of competition for free cash, and we don't want to get in the middle of that. And we're happy to help make sure that the $2 million that town meeting voters have previously approved for affordable housing can remain in that use by putting it into the trust. As I mentioned, so doing would increase the trust's balance to over $3 million, $3,074,000. And when we look at what the housing production priorities are in our recently updated and approved housing production plan, Assabet River Bluff and Junction Village, based on our current understanding of those 2 projects, in order to bring them to fruition or completion, they'd need all of that money and then some. So for us, it sort of reassures the public that that the $3 million is a balance that we would have could be put to work. And I just want to show you this. I hope you can see the whole.
Keith, can we go backwards for just a
Sure.
minute? I don't want to at all interrupt what you're doing because it's so helpful and so important. Toward the Junction Village, should an RFP produce some, a corporation that the town accepted, and they went forward on the Junction Village housing of 40 units or more in that space, would it curtail the Concord Housing Trust commitment to the Assabet River Bluff project? Would you see that in terms of priority, or has your committee had a chance to discuss that?
Well, we're taking our lead from the Concord Housing Development Corporation, who we've met with a couple of times, and that the CHDC has just recently taken votes where they are, and I don't want to speak on behalf of them, but from my understanding of attending their meeting, and they attended ours, that they're looking to bring for the Assabet River Bluff 5 units. They're looking to bring 2 of those to the point of where they can be deed restricted as affordable units. That's the existing 2-family. And in fact, the $500,000 that's in your Article 26, item B, can be the source of their efforts. However, when they look at when the CHDC rather looks at the fact that Assabet is would only produce 5 units if brought to fruition, but from the recent discussions about a potential family unit proposal at Junction Village, which it could be significantly more units than that. And I should add, as we're aware, that the CHDC has said that they will go through a public process of selecting a developer, that there is a potential bidder that has come forward, has met with the select board, has their reps have attended trust meetings and CHDC meetings and a number of meetings in the community. Recently, the West Concord Advisory Committee.
Right.
And so they're doing a lot of groundwork to see if there's a market, or if there's community support, I should say, for Junction Village being used for 40 or so family units. And 40 is what I heard as sort of their sweet
Bottom
spot
line.
of
Right.
might be more, might be less, but 40 is sort of what they do in order to make sure that it's fully staffed, and that a per unit subsidy could be on the range of $130,000 per unit.
Right.
So just by multiplication, that 40 at 130,000 apiece is $5.2 million dollars, which is, I think, perhaps a potential target for what the town subsidy might ultimately be. And mindful of that, mindful of how much could come from Junction Village, how many more units could come. It's my understanding that that CHDC is looking to have them both on dual tracks, but to do both of them, but perhaps pause after 2 units come online with Assabet, complete Junction Village, and then as funding permits, complete the additional 3 units at Assabet. That's my
That's been my understanding as well, Keith. Thank you so much. I think Paul has a question for you.
Yeah, before you change the slides, Keith, hi, Paul Baum here. These are your slides, not CPC, so I don't mean to edit them,
Right.
but I'm just wondering, the Junction Village, Assabet Bluff is a solid project. Junction Village is not yet a solid project. Should that be indicated in the slide? Which is, it's in progress. There are RFPs, there's potential, but it's not yet a project. I'm just wondering if you should, refer to it slightly differently than Assabet Bluff.
Yeah,
Just a
that's a good point. These are, I'll say, these are the draft slides that I put together for discussion by the trust tomorrow night. We put our own slides together, so I did these. But what we can say, they are labeled as the Housing Productions Plan top 2 priorities. That Assabet and Junction Village are the 2 sites, both owned by the CHDC, that are the top 2 sites for production. I guess what I'd hope to have is whatever the most information we can get out of CHDC, and we will certainly touch bases with them to describe what this might be, because I don't have I don't have a grant application for either one. The CPC has a $500,000 application for Assabet. The CHDC has shared that they think the total cost of bringing the 5 Assabet units online would be $1.3 million. So that's a ballpark figure. 1.3 minus 500,000 is 800 here.
I didn't mean to prolong the discussion. It was
Yeah.
just a comment on the last bullet.
Yeah, I think we could put it, we could put
It's up to you.
potential in or something, but I think in terms of the order of magnitude, I think it's, and since it's much in public debate, maybe we won't fine tune it quite so much, but I'll tell you, in front of the Finance Committee, I want to make sure if I put a number out there, I could do the math to show where it came from. So.
Thank you very much, Paul.
Thanks.
Yes, Nancy Nelson?
I think what I'm hearing is that after the 2 units for Assabet, River Bluff, Junction Village would be the #1 priority. And it would seem to be the most difficult to get that level of funding. So in the meantime, the other 3 for Assabet River Bluff, which might be much easier to attain, maybe fall into a lower priority. Is that correct?
Well, I would understand it to be a pause, certainly and I'll say some of the questions that the trust has and that I think that they're just and even who would be the best to answer, whether it's the CHDC or it's whoever their ultimate developer is. We'd want to know what are the cash flow needs? Does, for example, if we just said all the $3 million that we have will that the trust would have after town meeting, we're going to plug that into Junction Village. Well, one of the questions would be, and then do what? Wait for the other $3 million to appear somewhere before any of that money is spent? Or is there something that can be done in the meantime? So those are some of the questions that we're having with the CHDC to understand the dynamic. So
Thank you. Yeah,
Thank you.
complicated times. Okay. do you
it
want to keep
is,
going,
and then
Keith?
I'll just real quick. This just shows what the trust has spent the monies on to date. There's been $2 million in town meeting appropriations over the last 4 years. We received 1 donation, so that's our total amount. The projects that have gone for the ones listed, some of those were approved by the select board before the trust came into existence. The first project that we approved was funds for the Assabet River Bluff towards the acquisition. We had approved funds for the now defunct Christopher Heights, and then uncommitted them once the project did not proceed. And recently, we've been approached by the Concord Housing Authority about looking at doing some pre-development exploration of putting a second affordable unit on some property that they own. And that housing authority project is another one that's listed in the housing production plan. This next one just does the math and maybe of if we have a balance of $3 million, those 2 projects that I mentioned take twice that. We may want to massage how we present this information. And the last slide I have here is just an update of what the other production things that are called for in the housing production plan. Assabet, Junction Village, Concord Housing Authority. If we could, and we had the funds from the real estate transfer fee or elsewhere. ARPA funds is another thing I'd like to pursue, as well as maybe some state grant funds the town could get. But that acquiring privately owned land or surplus town property, those are in the 5-year plan of what we'd like to see, maybe negotiating additional affordable units if there's a 40B, a private 40B development that's submitted by a developer. Maybe that's an opportunity to use funds to increase the number of affordable units through the use of town funds, or to buy down units that we could bring them to affordable levels. So that's sort of the strategy of what we're looking at, and this is our first cut. As I say, this is not been signed off yet by the trust, but this is what we'll be discussing at our meeting tomorrow night.
Thank you so much, Keith. I have one quick question before you move this slide, and
Sure.
then if other people do as well. The $5.2 million is on the basis of one presentation, right? It's possible that someone would come in with something that was cost less. It's also possible that somebody could present a project for Chris Rice that costs more.
That's right. Yeah, and I.
Or
yeah.
this is all rather speculative based on one person who's.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, maybe to put it would be more effective to put a range of potential things, if it's, it could be, I've also heard the range of somewhere between 4 million and 6.5 million.
Right.
And that maybe that's the best way to put some uncertainty, because there certainly is uncertainty
There's
about
a
what
lot
the
of
final
uncertainty,
numbers
I
would be.
think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Thank you, Keith, so much.
Okay.
Are there
Thank you.
questions for Keith from our committee?
No.
Okay, seeing none, Keith, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much for your
Joining us
support.
tonight
We're-
and for sharing your slides. I mean, that was really very helpful.
you
And
bet.
just to remind us, the two that I said are rather pro forma is one is the transfer of that money. Remember, first we transferred it to us and now we're transferring it to the Concord Municipal Affordable Housing Trust. And the second one is the dissolution of the money from the West Concord Village Association for the way they were going to landscape, if you remember, the Junction Village project, because that project hasn't gone forward. So we're reabsorbing that money. And we'll see how it gets used in the future, but we can't do, but first we have to gain it back in a formal way. So as I said, those are somewhat housekeeping and fairly formal. Keith, thank you so much. The second and project updates, FY 2023 second quarter. Anne, can you take us through this one, please?
Sure, just 1 minute. Okay, can you see the screen?
Yes, thank you so
Yes,
much.
Sure. All right, so here I've just listed all of the projects that are in process. There's the grant awards. We have the beginning balance at the July 1st, 2022, which is the beginning of FY 2023. And then these two columns show the activity this year. And then you can see the balance of unencumbered and unspent money. So let's see. The housing production plan, as you know, is complete. These others, there has been no activity this year, and it's very clear from this chart, which ones are moving ahead and which ones are haven't had any change. So that was
It's good to see the Commonwealth Avenue project progressing so well.
I don't think anything, they haven't requested any funds actually.
Oh, they haven't. Oh, good heavens. Okay. Do we know why not? I thought that we were the ones that were supporting that.
Well, let me explain the as I understand it, so far Habitat is bearing all of the costs and volunteer work and so forth. And they say that they will request us to pay the sewer extension. That's something like,
Ah,
I think I've heard the figure about $60,000 to $70,000 that we'll use 300,000 for. We'll take out of the 300,000. So we have not yet heard in the Housing Authority, we haven't heard of any other requests from Habitat, but there may be
okay.
as they build.
And thank you for that reminder. Actually, this chart is for the second quarter of FY 23, which only goes through December 31st. And you're right, the Commonwealth Ave project that Concord Housing Authority has submitted a request for reimbursement, or actually for money in advance to pay for that sewer connection. And so that's been approved.
Terrific.
Yeah.
So
Sorry.
there may be some residual funds left there eventually, right?
Yes, definitely.
Mark?
And the HTC has yet to use the Affordable Housing Buy Down Funds.
Yes.
Okay,
So again, this is the beginning balance at the start of the fiscal year and the activity this year.
mhm.
Uh,
Can we see the pedestrian bridge? I'm curious about that one for just a minute.
Sure. Right, so this is pending. This has not, oh, sorry. The new one is pending, but previous allocations are being spent. So the one from FY 2019 is down to 0. The one from FY 2021 is down to, oh, I guess there's 90,000 encumbered. There's about 40,000 that's been spent. And then there's about 4,000 that's unencumbered and unspent.
Okay, thank you.
And then there's still 300,000 that hasn't yet been started.
Okay, do we know why, Anne?
No, I think they're just spending down the money from the previous years. So once this money is gone from FY 2021, then they'll move on to the funds from FY 2023.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Diane, just a question. I'm wondering in
Sure, Paul.
response to Dee's heads up on
Right,
the questions, if you're going to be asked about unspent committed funds, I'm just wondering, you're probably going to need some summary from this chart, right?
I sure am.
Yeah. Okay, just a hint. The data are here.
Boy, are you right, Paul?
The data are here.
Yeah, sitting on the hot seat. Okay. Okay,
Okay, the land acquisition for Aspet River Bluff is down to 0. That money's been allocated. Preservation restrict or conservation restriction isn't in place yet. That's obviously going to take some time. Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. These are like old funds. There hasn't been activity really this year.
I'm fairly alarmed that those funds have not been drawn on for look how long since 19.
I
And
think they have been drawn on.
a
Isn't
little
the
bit, but
There's not much left. This is
okay,
almost
in that
done.
one, right?
There's just a $114
114,
left.
right?
And then the FY 2022 funds for 25,000.
Yeah.
So that just needs to get wrapped up.
Okay,
This one is an old one too, and there's some talk of maybe shifting one of the fountains to a different location, maybe by visitor services. But if they make that shift, they should come before the CPC and present it to you for your approval,
okay.
I would expect.
And I'm sorry, just the orientation. The third column from the right is the remaining funds. Third column, that column right there.
Right, this is
Okay.
unencumbered and unspent.
Okay, got it.
So encumbered is like if there's a PO, an open PO, the money's been
Okay.
appropriated, but not
Thank
yet.
you.
Okay. Emerson Field improvements, looks like it's done.
Could you go back? I'm sorry, up just a little bit, Anne.
Mhm.
The Chamberlain Park Bridge design and survey is so hard when you can't see the titles up above. So it's
I know, I'm sorry.
no, that's all right. That's not your fault. But so the $35,000 has not been spent, right?
Right,
Okay.
right. This is the beginning of the year.
Mm-hmm.
No money has been encumbered or spent, and this is what's unencumbered and unspent. So what's
Okay.
remaining. Things I've asked, since there's no money left, there's no money at the beginning of the year. And I just need to get clarification on why we can't close these out.
Okay,
Because it seems as if we should be able to.
right.
Remember, I've only been here 8 months or something, so I'm not really
Why
familiar
aren't
with
you
these
on top of
projects.
this?
I know.
You haven't had anything to do, Anne. You've been amazing. Okay. So, the Haywood Meadow Restoration, there's still money in that account, right?
Yes,
13,000, and that was in 2010. So
right.
can we presume therefore that we have that $14,000 now to come back to us?
I will check. Right, this does seem to be like it's been open for a very long time.
Yes,
They did spend $4,000 this year, I think, for invasive management.
okay,
I will check on that one.
okay.
There seemed to be an awful lot of work on invasive management this year too.
And the Junction Village Open Space number 721, FY 23 is are the funds that are coming back to us.
Yes.
So that's that precise one right there.
Right.
Okay,
Right, and this, I guess, is still December 31st, so that's why
Right.
it's still there.
and I presume that there's an error here. It's 34,500, but not 345,000,
Oh, you're right.
I think.
Yes, I will. Right. I don't think that this number is correct, but I do think. that
Right.
this one
I
is.
think the other ones are correct, but so
Yes.
again, they've not done anything there with the old rifle range.
Right.
Okay,
The recreation facility strategic plan, that money is encumbered, so
okay,
they have hired someone. There's a purchase order for that, but they haven't yet spent the money. But
okay.
that's happening. Let's see. There's been some activity here on Warner's Pond dredging.
It's really important to stop on the Warner's Pond dredging for just a minute, because there is in the bank there for $750,000. And let's all remember that when we get to the Warner's Pond discussion, okay? Thank you.
This one is just about complete.
Could you go back up to the Warner's Pond for just a minute? Is there something left over from the first one? Okay, no, okay, thank you very much. So all that was spent. Thank you.
Yes. So the oral history is moving along.
The Emerson Field flagpole, can we stop there for a minute?
Sure.
So we have Melissa on the call, which is grand. And I think she was one of the people to forward this one. Melissa, can you speak to us a little bit, or if you're hearing this, do you anticipate that the rest of that money will be spent?
Hi, I actually do not know, because the town took this over. Aaron McCloskey took it over. So he really would be the person in Public Works to talk to. I think it's done. The question I have is I'm over there a fair amount with my dog. And there was a time capsule there at the foot of the pole that they have kind of covered over with earth. I have a question about what their intention is regarding revealing the time capsule.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as I know, I would assume that they are done. I don't know why there's still money left, because I
Okay.
think the project's done.
Well, we have some cleaning up clearly to do, but thank you, Melissa, for popping on and helping us with that. Very much appreciated. Okay, 58 Monument Square roof replacement. They gathered some of that money. Anne, can you give us any information about that one?
I just know that they've been stopping in and have requested some funds to reimburse them. Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So it is moving along.
It's
Now,
what?
The Old Manse, they're still working on their RFP, I think.
Oh, okay.
Um,
That's understandable because that's brand new. So can we stop? No, can we go to the Walden, 110 Walden Street, phase 3? Do we know what's happening there?
Right, I had checked in with them a few times when I first started, before things got really busy with
Yeah.
the Junction Village. And they said that they would send me the information. I've checked in with them, yeah, a few times, and I haven't received it yet.
Okay, they're usually pretty efficient about things, so I'm
Yeah.
surprised that they're not further along, but
I'll
okay.
check again.
Diane, does each project require a progress report? Shouldn't we be able to go to the progress reports and actually get that information? I'm just wondering, Anne, if we are getting progress reports for all these projects.
Right, so that's this last column. I was just going by what, I guess they send out requests typically just once a year in the spring. So the last request went out in April. And so Heather had noted which ones had arrived, marked in green with a Y.
You know,
So we're about due to send out another
yeah,
appeal.
Paul asks a very important question because we've been struggling with this really for several years, Paul. And I think maybe we might change the progress report process and ask for progress twice a year,
Okay,
so that we have a more accurate sensibility for one, how much money we potentially have unspent. And secondly, so that it keeps those projects on their toes, so they know that we're watching them and paying attention to unspent funds.
very good. We'll do
Exactly.
that. I can send out one soon.
So maybe in October, if we sent them out in April, May, June, if we, January, February, March, April, I'm counting on my fingers, which is embarrassing, but if we sent them out in April and then again in October, you know, that way, when we come to figure out our final funding, we would know better, you know, what funds aren't being spent.
And I think each project should project what they're going to spend in the next period.
Right.
Maybe they do. I have to go back to the progress reports and look at them, but I think we could ask for more useful information than we're getting, I think.
I think that's very important.
Good, and if you want to review the request or the form for progress reports and let me know how you'd like to see it changed, we can certainly do that.
Sure.
Let's talk about that, okay, at our next meeting, but I'll
Yeah.
talk with you about it in between, Anne, and we can look at the form, okay?
Okay,
Okay, sounds like a plan. Okay. Then the oral history project,
right. I think they've hired the person to conduct one of them.
terrific.
There's a purchase order for that one.
Okay. Okay. The Wheeler Harrington House and Land. It would appear that they have not spent the money.
Correct.
It would be nice to know why and what's going on there.
Can I say something?
Of course.
On behalf of Marcia, she had intended to make a presentation before the Historical Commission. She does intend to conduct a public charrette about this. I think that's what this money is for, but she had some further work to do with Delia. You know, this Wheeler Harrington is sort of under the auspices of the Natural Resources Commission, but also the Historical Commission.
That's exactly right. Okay. Thank you, Melissa. Then of the $600,000 to the Right Tavern, we can see that so far $44,000 has been requested. But otherwise, there's still a fair amount of money there, and we have the Right Tavern folks with us tonight, so we'll have a chance for a good discussion with them. Thank you very much, Anne. Clearly, we need to get on top of some of these folks, figure out what they're doing in your free time, which you don't have. But we'll figure it out and we'll work together. And I can expedite some of that for you by sending letters or notes to people. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Sounds perfect. Right Tavern, welcome. we have Peter Nobley. Hello, Peter. And we have Tom Wilson and
Hello, Diane.
and Doug. Doug, hello. And Doug,
Doug's,
could you
yes, go
explain?
ahead.
We haven't had you in our committee before, so can you explain your background?
Yes, I'm Doug Manley. I'm a principal and architect with the Spencer Preservation Group. And we've been hired by the Wright Tavern Trust to proceed with the first step is some renovations and repairs that are going forward. And we can talk about those tonight.
That's terrific. And Doug, may I just ask, is your organization an historic preservation
Yes,
architecture firm?
we're architects and preservation planners, and yes, 90% of our work is historic preservation. We occasionally get an addition to a historic building, but
Okay.
Mostly historic preservation work.
Okay, thanks so much. It's just good. It's good for us to know. And I apologize that we don't, that at least I can speak for myself that I don't. Okay. So who's going to present what in this, from the three of you? Tom, you're going to do it?
Yeah, oh, I'm not going to present. I'm just going to give a little context, a little updates on where we are, because there's a number of
Okay.
things that are out there that I think are exciting, and I want to share with you. So just three quick things. One of which is, as of yesterday, the Wright Tavern Legacy Trust Board approved the schematic designs for the building. They've been working for about 6 months with both Doug's group, the Spencer Preservation Group, Amaze Design, and a team of historical experts to help us develop what the concept would look like and the content. And so at some point in time, when you all are ready, I would love to share with you what that is, but that's not really for tonight. But if you want to, I'm excited to share that with you. Second thing, just a quick update on the preservation restriction, because I know that's an issue
Right.
that is really important.
Can you explain that, Tom, just for anybody observing this later or trying to understand what that means?
Sure. This is an agreement between the town and the First Parish Church that we would do two things. I mean, there's it's a 20-page legal document, but essentially two things. And the major focus of it was to preserve the historical fabric within the building. And to the point that Doug mentioned, Doug's firm actually was the lead architect, if you will, and designer that went in and documented everything that is historical that needs to be preserved, and that's now written into the preservation restriction that way as we have it. So they know this sort of building very well, and better than anybody else. And then the second part is related to the public access, and I won't go into a lot of detail on that because this is sort of a work in process. But the trustees of the church met with the committee, and I was there. And we met a couple of different times over the last several months to try to get a resolution on that, because the committee, the historic committee, wants the building to be open for 64 days a year.
That's right.
And obviously, and that means forever. And so the question really for the church is there any problems with the historical fabric or even the days, as long as the Legacy Trust is in existence and we can continue to operate in the building. So the question is, what happens if, because we have, forever is a long time, let's put it that way.
In perpetuity is, I think, the language, isn't it?
Thank you.
Yeah.
And so Melissa has asked us, and this is what we're working right now, is to meet with town council, and we have a council as well.
I don't mean, Tom, I don't mean to interrupt you again, but you can explain what Melissa's role is in this.
Sure, she is
They
chair
don't
of the Historic Commission,
Right, okay.
Historical Commission, and just been great working with her and the team to kind of clarify a lot of the issues. We pinpointed, it's like a negotiation. We're down to a very simple thing that I think is going to get resolved. And so she asked us to meet with town council and then come to the committee on their March 23rd meeting to present a proposal that would then be acceptable from the town's perspective and reviewed by the committee. So we're working on that and want that to happen. And so we're very confident, and it's really important. It's important for us for a whole bunch of reasons, not least of which is necessary for us to continue with the funding from the CPC funds. And I don't know if you wanted to say anything to add to that.
And I'd just like to say something, Diane, and to you, Tom. So the Historical Commission has developed additional other language, which we hope is more acceptable to you.
Oh, great.
And I haven't, so Anne maybe knows, we've sent this around. And then we intend to have a special meeting on Friday morning. We hope to agree with the language. Jesse, you can speak for yourself because this isn't a different meeting, it's not a historical commission meeting, but at any rate, we hope to come to an agreement amongst ourselves. And we will be sending that to you. We would like to finish this well before the March 23rd meeting.
I tell you, we would too, because it's one of the most, it is the most critical piece that needs to fit into this mosaic that we're creating.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's important to us because the honoring of the Historic Preservation Agreement is, our funding is contingent upon the honoring of that. So the reason to go into detail right now is just so everyone's clear about what that relationship is. Although they're two different committees, they work in tandem.
Absolutely.
With each other. So just to clarify, Melissa, who is meeting on Friday morning? I presume you mean February 24th.
The Historical Commission.
The Historical Commission is meeting.
So there would be Nancy, who is a member of it, myself, and the other members of the Historical Commission. We have developed new language for the public access, which is the one sticking point. The rest of the preservation restriction has already been accepted by both parties.
Right.
The one issue was we felt strongly that public access is an essential element of this preservation restriction. And the 64 days was just kind of came out of air, but we think we have a better plan. But we are very much concerned about getting this thing signed and properly filed at the county. So,
Thank you so much. I know you've all been working very hard and we appreciate that hard work.
Well, it takes patience, as you always have to do, and it's like wine, it will come at the right time. And so I'm excited to hear that, and I look forward to getting that. I'm quite sure we're going to get, because we're very close and everybody wants the right thing. So that's the second thing. And the third thing is really why we're here tonight.
Never mind.
We do it all the time.
Over to Peter and to Doug, because one of our obligations is to review with you the material, the designs we have for the structural integrity, which is a lot of what most or a lot of the CPC funding is going to be applied to. And so part of our responsibility is to share that with you before we have contract with anybody to do the work. So they'll give you an update on that. So
thank you, Tom.
I'll turn it over now.
Okay, Peter and Doug, do you both need screen sharing, or Doug, are you?
No, I think, and Doug, we hadn't worked this out before. I've got the documents here, Doug, or if you could want to share.
No, I have them ready too, Peter. Why don't
okay. Why don't you share? And Diane, thank you. All I was going to say, I'm just here as window dressing mostly to help answer
Peter,
questions.
You're never window dressing, but go ahead.
Thank you. You're very kind. Doug is our expert. I think we have a 15-page set of drawings and a 60-page spec book that we're about to bid out to, Doug, a half a dozen contractors. Yeah. And so where we are in the process is we've got the documents, we're about to get bids, and we hope to, select a bidder and all. At that point, that's when we get a final bid, that's when we would come back to you formally and do a presentation, but we're happy to walk through it tonight.
Well,
so
Doug,
you can see the
maybe you could walk, that would be wonderful, Peter, and Doug, maybe you can walk us through that. And if you could make Doug a co-host, that would be terrific.
I'm all set.
Thank you, Doug. Great. Take it away.
So don't worry, I won't go through the 50 pages that Peter I'll give you a
page one,
much more swift and yes, I believe the tavern will be coming back to you soon to take some of that money that I saw on the chart there recently, so in front of me. So I know we're getting to the point now where this is rolling, and we're ready to start doing some serious work on the building. One of our we're working with a collaborator closely with us, our structural engineer, who's a key component to this team. Structures North from Salem is a structural engineering firm that like us, they're almost exclusively historic buildings, and they have deep experience in first period buildings and structures like this. So they're a big part of putting this together. But what we're looking to do is, I'll start right at the bottom quickly and work our way up through the building. But what we're hoping to do is at the first floor, which will be the main floor that's open to the public, is to do structural repairs, but to also increase the floor loading capacity to 100 pounds per square foot, which is what a modern code would require for assembly use, which is what the projected future use of the building is. So the way we do that is we introduce intermediate columns so that we're taking less load on the beams. So what you're seeing in my diagram here is these are new columns that catch the mid spans of beams. So we're putting new concrete footings and pipe columns in the basement to where this will be devoted more to mechanical, and in fact this is actually just a crawl space. So there's we're not really taking up usable space in doing that, in getting to the floor loading capacity that we'd like.
It was pretty clear spending time down there that was necessary. So well
Yes.
done.
Yeah, there you can see cracks in the beams and deterioration. So that's part of what we're doing there. The other thing we're doing there is where there are brick piers existing, we're doing some rebuilding, repointing of the brick piers where the rising damp has been brought up into the structural support. So we'll be cleaning those up as we go on too. And then this is that first floor framing that I talked about. So up at the second floor, our intent is to keep that at a 65 pounds per square foot capacity. So it's less open to the general public than the first floor will be, a lighter loading capacity. But there, ideally in that situation, you'd like to add columns, but no, that's going to destroy the interior character of the space. So what we're doing is a design that takes up the floorboards in the second floor and installs reinforcement to the beams that will be invisible when they're completed, but we'll be adding there's structural steel T-shaped members that fit into the top of the beams, and we'll take care of the floor loading without the need for columns on the lower levels. And then the other challenge that we have is up at the roof, picking up snow loads. There, it's we see right now very noticeable sagging in the roof, and we're hoping to reinforce that. And our engineers have come up with what we think is a pretty ingenious way of doing that, with steel trusses that will be assembled on site. They're made up of smaller members that are lightweight and easily carried into the building without taking the building apart. And then their pieces are bolted together to take up the roof framing loads. So these won't be seen, but we'll be doing their work up there. And then amongst this many pages that Peter talked about, in many cases at the basement level where posts are deteriorated, we're doing wood Dutchman to the original posts, where we're doing repairing the bottom pieces of, and this is as I spoke about, the dealing with the rising damp in the brick piers and brick foundation. We'll be doing this, but so basically our intent is to do this reinforcing and leave the building unaware that we've been there at the end of the day, that no visible means of support as we go forward. As Peter mentioned, we've invited 6 carpentry specialist preservation firms to do this work, to provide bids, so that we're in a competitive bidding situation. And our bids are going to be due on March 22nd. So at that point, we will know what the cost is to do all of this work and to move forward with it.
Fantastic. I have to confess that at first, when you were talking about the first floor, I was thinking of the area even lower than that. And so when I said you could see the need, I was really speaking about time in the basement when we could really see the need, for improvement to those the weight-bearing structures. So thank you very much. Let me stop for just a minute and see if anybody on the committee has questions.
Can I just add one quick thing, Doug? May I, Diane, just real quick, there are a couple of alternates in the bid package. Doug didn't want to go into detail because he's trying to be merciful, but the first phase of the truss arrangement includes some very thin tie rods to hold the structure together, but the future master plan, which I think we'd all like to see, is to re-shingle the roof with wood shakes. At
Oh,
which
good.
point we would actually create a diaphragm with new substrate framing, and those tie rods will go away. So I think the bids may be, and Doug, you can tell me when you tabulate them, they may have a base bid and then alternates, and we'll have to decide. There's only a certain amount of money what we can do day one.
You're right.
Well, thank
That's
you.
all I wanted to add.
No, that's wonderful. So there's both an immediate and a series of ad seriatim long range plans about the restoration of the building. Questions from anybody who's present? I have one question. How is your private you don't have to divulge anything, but is your private funding coming along as you hoped it would?
Yes and no. We've identified a number of foundations. We're applying for a number of grants. We are having conversations with individuals who are high net worth individuals. Every person we talk to about the plan, at least at this stage, has gotten really excited about what we're talking about, and both in the interior and the exterior. And we're actually doing a presentation to the HDC related to a new entrance and what that would look like. On the Main Street side of the building. So it's, I wish we were further along on the funding. There has been some pledges we've received, but we estimate that we'll need probably 4 million for the building and 2 million for what I call reserves. And we've got a bid from Amaze Designs for implementing the exhibit designs. So we know kind of what that's going to look like. We know kind of what the repairs are going to look like. What we don't know is that the number of improvements we want to make to the building, like security systems and HVAC and other things like that, that we're going to be working on over the next couple of months. So it's a big project, and people are, there's a lot of interest right now, but not just in Concord, but actually some voices nationally. So
don't forget to say you've got 100% board participation in the fundraising.
That's right. That's right.
Well, Tom, this is really important, and we're glad to hear that. I think that the necessity, I mean, most people don't want to invest in HVAC systems.
Right.
That's not usually the sexy development bit. Would you like to put it?
Right, exactly.
So
put your name on the
on your HVAC. So I mean, these things are always complicated. Nancy Nelson first.
Just related to fundraising, I'm not a fundraising expert, but I seem to know that fundraising efforts usually go in phases, and before you have a quiet fundraising phase to first figure out what the interest is, the magnitude of interest, if it can fund your aspirations. And this project is already beginning to seem really, really big. And so far we don't know. I mean, I know it'll come back to CPC, but without substantial alternate funding, which we know nothing about at this point, I don't know where the project ends up. So I know you must be thinking about that, but it's something that really, really concerns me, because I mean, I even wonder the magnitude of what the consultants' fees are going to be on this. And it seems to be that you don't have an estimate at all of what that first phase one is going to cost until you get actual bids. And then, but shouldn't you have some estimate of what you're looking at before you bid it out?
Well, we do have some estimates, and there's once again lots of detail we could go into. But we have hired a professional fundraising advisor, so we're working with, and we have a strategy. And just like you said, Nancy, we are in the quiet, personal conversation stages. There'll be probably 2 or 3 other stages beyond that. before we sort of like, I'll call it go public, if you will, around fundraising. But it's an important, we recognize, and people we've talked to recognize both the historical significance, but the significance it has to the town and the significance it has to our country in terms of the 250 and other things. So we're finding a lot more open doors than what you do in a comparable kind of project in some other place. The 250 celebration is opening up more funding, if you will. So there's a lot of things happening, and it's kind of I'm playing like 3 games of whack-a-mole and trying to in terms of funding. So, so I really do appreciate and you're absolutely right, Nancy. I sleep when my monitor my blood pressure and don't get sleep is exactly what you're talking about.
Me too.
On the other hand, I'm also the thing is I'm also so encouraged by the responses we've gotten from people in different sectors, and people are willing to reach out to how can I help, and it's great. But we, until checks start to arrive, I'm not going to sleep well.
Yeah.
So I had a couple of other questions. Doug, I know you're an architect. I'm just wondering, I'm wondering about the CPC's obligation to ensure compliance with the Secretary of the Interior standards. And I'm wondering, is there a qualified person to certify that the plans are compliant with the Secretary's standards? And is that person you?
It normally is when we've done similar projects in other communities, and for projects funded through the Mass Historical Commission, it's generally me that does that certification.
So you're a historical architect, or an architect who's been so immersed that you qualify as a qualified person?
Yeah, I would say that that's probably more true, that in life I started out as in a more traditional architecture role, but have spent the last 35 years in historic preservation.
That's all?
Yeah, and my last project in Concord was at the Concord Townhouse. I was involved with that. I was the project architect for the masonry restoration.
Oh, yeah.
I was responsible for changing the white trim to brown that you see today.
Thank you.
So, yeah, so that in. That was my last visit to Concord working on a project, but yeah, I've been doing it a while.
So that's good to know. And then I know I've heard several estimates for visitation, and that probably influences the degree to which a lot of steel and whatnot reinforcement in the building is happening, which seems to be extensive in terms of impacting historic fabric, the ceilings, the floorboards.
Yeah.
And is that all built around anticipation of 25,000 visitors a year, which is something we've heard in the past?
It's certainly the way that we're looking at it, approaching it, is more like what is the capacity at any one time, and so we look at it more like that. Tom would be the best one to ask on projections for visitation, but we're designing to the code standards for floor loading capacities for the individual spaces.
For individual spaces, but not necessarily for the specific use requirements or the.
Yeah, we're guided by the building code, and as I mentioned, we would fall into assembly use, and therefore that's the chart that we go to in the building code, and that's why we're designing to 100 pounds per square.
So the assembly use is based on how number of people, right, at any one time? How many people are you assuming at any one time in the building? In that case, I'm just curious order of magnitude in terms of the visitation.
So in the early planning that we've been doing, we foresee the newer porch addition as being the main assembly room, and we look at that as holding about 50 people, and that's probably going to be the maximum that the building sees at one time.
And that's also the interior of the building, right? Which is the old tavern itself.
That's a later addition.
Oh, okay.
Quite a bit later. edition.
In 1924, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Um,
I had one more. Could we, Diane, you asked my question too about fundraising, because I'm nervous about the total cost of this and whether or not the bulk of the project will eventually come back to CPC if fundraising is not as successful as anticipated. $6 million is a lot of money. That's all. And thank you very much. I think that's all, except for I'd love to have a site visit. And it's too bad our architect isn't here today because I'm not an architect. I don't think any of us are. So it's
None of this is, and I'm sorry Eve isn't here, but she can watch the tape and get back to us and let us know what her questions are and what her thoughts are.
Yeah.
I think as we look at the Concord 250 events coming up, the anticipation for intense visitation, I don't believe is exaggerated.
I'm a little more skeptical than you are about that.
Oh, you don't think it will be as heavily visited?
I'm sorry. Yeah, I think it'll be an increase in visitation, but I think the aspirations may be overblown, but we'll see. Nobody knows for sure at this point.
I think the people that know this best are the people that run the tourist agencies, and they have a very good sense. And I've been working pretty closely with them because I'm on the executive committee.
Do they have any figures? I mean, this is a little off our topic tonight.
But we already get an enormous number of visitors to the town.
Yeah, I'm familiar.
And so I think that we're going to find that with the advent of the 25 and all the other things that go hand in glove, and depending upon who speaks and what kind of people we have, present when that takes place, will either attract more people or it will be a rather low-key event. But I think it could be potentially a rather, particularly in league with Lexington, Boston, Arlington, and other.
It'd be interesting to know a little more about more precisely what those projections are and what they're based on.
Well, they're based, as far as I can tell, on some pretty sound research by Freedom's Way and other places which are accustomed to managing this kind of discussion.
Oh, that's great. I'd love to see that, actually.
Melissa?
Thank you.
Hi, thank you. So my question back to you, Tom, is about fundraising. And I have done, because this was how I made my living for a long time.
Right.
So my question goes back to, if you're doing this, you have a case statement. That's how you would present it. So would you be willing to share that with us?
It's still in draft form, and we're reviewing it. And part of the things we want to do at this early stage with some of the conversations we're having with certain individuals is to review that in terms of does it speak to them? Does it? But sure, I'd be willing to share it with you.
Yeah,
it's
again,
just a draft at this point, and yeah, I mean,
because what I go back to is our initial question was, what is the ultimate, what is the use that you're going to be putting the Wright Tavern to? That has been the throughout this whole thing, that has been our principal question. So I would very, very much appreciate that. I think all members of the Historical Commission would appreciate that. I appreciate it's in draft form because actually, as a fundraiser who did a lot of capital campaigns, it always is in draft form, frankly.
Right, that's true. That's true.
And I think, Melissa, when you use the phrase us, you mean the Historic Commission.
Yes.
It's not that the CPC would not be interested, but I mean, really.
No, it has been the driving question from the very first meeting that we had. Because we want to understand.
One thing I'm going to just say, well, at a fairly high level, and I can get into a lot more detail, but the high level is really we see this as an experiential museum where people come in and learn things about taverns, April 19th, Provincial Congress, the stories of Concord, the stories of people who have really fought for their rights, and to experience that in a way that is both educational and really powerful in terms of the messages and the experience people have. So it's different than what you see at the Concord Museum, but very complementary. And secondly, it would be also a place where we could, as a gathering place for meetings and educational programs and events like that. So we're setting up the meeting, we set the place, and Doug mentioned that, with the what we're calling the Many Voices room, the outside porch, is that room itself would be one that we could actually have more kind of events at. So we see it as both because taverns back in those times were a gathering place.
Yes.
So we see this really as a place where people gathered, debated, and made decided on actions that would help to protect their rights. And this overarching theme. So it's going to be kind of I think, a unique experience, and one I think will really be quite important and distinctive.
Okay.
Thank you so
I
much.
can get in more detail, but tell them exactly how that's going to happen, but I want to not do, but just to say at that level.
No, I thought you have a very informed paragraph in the presentation that I've seen, Tom, and so that's a big help. Well, Peter and Doug and Tom, thank you very much for spending time with
You're
us.
welcome.
tonight.
Thank you.
And it's very much appreciated, and it gives us a sense of how you're going forward and the degree to which we can be helpful or supportive. I know you will keep in touch.
Yep.
Yes, more updates soon.
Yep.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
And now you're of course welcome to stay, but and Linda Escobedo, welcome. Now the question is the Warner's Tavern. The Warner's Tavern. Hello, the Warner's Pond dredging. We saw from our study that we have about $750,000 already put aside for that project. And our understanding was that that there was going to be a series of public, or at least one, if not a series of public hearings and a survey for the town in order to help inform the kind of application that Delia eventually makes to the CPC, whether it's for dredging or whether it's to return that money and not dredge and do something else having to do with the dam. Anne, you've been in touch with Delia. She could not be here tonight, but can you give us an update from your perspective? It would be most helpful.
Sure, and this is not from my perspective, but it is from an email
Right.
from
I apologize from
Oh,
Delia's
no,
perspective.
that's okay.
I
I
apologize.
am not involved with the project at all, and I wish I knew more, but I really don't. So she did provide a brief update that she held a project kickoff meeting and 2 subsequent planning meetings with the consultant, recreation, engineering, and national resources staff. She printed and distributed a community survey and announcement of the first community meeting to be held on March 2nd at 7 p.m., both in person and virtually. The consultant has reviewed available desktop data sources in previous reports, completed field data collection, including, bathymetric and sediment depth survey, habitat assessment, evaluation of upstream and downstream reaches of the Neshopa Brook, and a review of existing infrastructure. The consultant also prepared conceptual alternatives technical memorandum to summarize project goals, objectives, and provide preliminary descriptions of alternatives. They prepared a community survey, prepared the initial conceptual level designs for 2 action alternatives. So that those portions of the consultant work are complete. And also the consultant is in the process of preparing a presentation for the community meeting, the draft conceptual design drawings and cost estimates for the 2 action alternatives, and preparing visual renderings for 2 action alternatives, and preparing the final report. And the draft will be provided in late March. Delia also, go ahead, sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay, and Delia also wanted to note that the survey, there was a invitation sent. Let me just put that up on the screen. Okay, are you able to see that?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Which had a link, and I guess there was an issue with the link. The
Yes,
survey was.
I was going to mention that.
inadvertently-
It's fixed now.
It's fixed
Oh,
now.
right. So it was deactivated, but it was corrected on Monday, the 20th. They'll also be providing paper copies of the survey to those who prefer hard copy to the URL link for the postcard. And that's
Okay.
it.
Thank you so much. I have a series of questions, and I wish Delia were here, but I'm going to mention a couple of them, Anne, and I don't expect you to answer them, but I would like the committee to deliberate on these questions a little bit. I gather there was meant to be a postcard in people's mailboxes, i.e. an invitation today. Some people received it Monday. How many people did receive it in their mailboxes?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. We did not. I mean, it did not come to us at all. This sometimes happens with town mailing, so I hope that it will come eventually. I know that there were some problems with the code, but I gather that it sounds like that's been fixed up. That's terrific. I would like to say that if somebody receives this on school vacation week, when a lot of families are away and therefore begin to kind of then hunker on to this and say, well, come back on the weekend and say, so what's going on? And then they have exactly 48 hours to organize their lives so they can be at that public hearing. And I guess I'm a little concerned about the fact that the public hearing follows so very quickly upon the sending out of the postcard, particularly during public school vacation week, when, as I said, so many families are distracted or otherwise not focusing on town business. Does anybody else share that concern? Or am I the only one who feels that way? Paul?
I guess I share the concern a bit on the positive, and I think the survey is pretty well constructed, and it does lay out the three options. My question, maybe it's a concern, is how Delia is going to take all the information and come up with sort of the plan and come to us, because right now there are three plans that she's looking at, the consultant's looking at, the public will be asked to comment on, and could she do the public meeting a week later? I don't know what the schedule is. There's so many. I know I had spoken to Delia about getting it done earlier in the year, but there's so much competition for public hearings. I think she did the best she could as scheduling the date. So I do share a bit of a concern, but on the other hand, I think the survey information went out and was broadcast pretty well. I'm not sure why you didn't get it, Diane, but
no, we didn't. But somebody sent it to me anyway and asked me, so I've taken the survey.
Yeah, no, I have to. So I think she's going to get some good feedback. And my question is how, what's her plan for turning that around into a plan that has some dollars behind it?
Well, I'm so glad to hear that all of you received it. I mean, that is just fantastic news. I would suggest, and I'd like us to pass this on to Delia, that she have an opportunity for a second public hearing. Just so that if there are people who have questions, and you're absolutely right, the public hearings are crammed during the second week of March, because that's when FinCom and Select Board and all the other planning board have their public hearings in advance of the warrant. But it would be very nice, maybe even on a weekend, to have a public hearing for families to gather and be able to comment on the Warner's Pond. Now, it may not produce a particularly broad audience. I'm not sure. I can't do that on the March 2nd, but there'll probably be plenty of people there who will be able to, to chime in and make ask their questions and hear the thoughts that are presented. Does anybody else think it would be reasonable to suggest or ask if there could be a second public hearing? Or does that seem just too confusing to try to communicate to the broad public?
It was advertised in the Bridge as well, Diane, so I'm sure a lot of people would have seen it there.
Well, yes, as I said again, this is right now, given the way families are organizing, that comes on Friday or Saturday, exactly when they're going off on their, on their, I mean, you can just tell by the traffic in town, that there isn't much, during this week, because a lot of people are away and doing things. So it just is.
Diane, I think to some extent it depends on how successful that public meeting is going to be.
Yeah.
If there are, hundreds of people there, that'd be great. If there's 75, I mean, the second public meeting would be essential if the attendance was really skimpy.
Okay, but then we can certainly wait and see. I just think an informed decision is going to be an important one. Particularly, and I say this in not in a defensive way, but we're going to have to go forward and defend whatever whatever we're funding for whatever reason and how much we're funding. And so we really need to know that we're not going to suddenly stand up and say that this is what we were funding, only to be met with an avalanche of concern from the public that they didn't feel they had enough advance
But
notice,
you're-
or they.
You're not going to have all of the information at the FinCom meeting. So I think.
Oh,
mean,
I
don't wanna put-
understand.
yeah,
I understand that.
I think
Paul.
it's in progress.
Right. Well,
and-
that's what I'm going to say at the FinCom meeting, but
Yeah.
that's neither here nor there. I'm talking about when we actually have the town
Yeah,
meeting.
yeah.
You know,
Well, that-
we're going to need to be certain that we're standing on firm ground. That's all. And in order to protect the good work that's going on, this is not meant critically. It's meant as an honest appraisal of what's going on. Nancy.
The hopeful thing might be, and Sarah, maybe you guys are already thinking this way. Certainly after the FinCom meeting, things may come up about this, and it's an opportunity for other people to provide maybe a broader story about Warner's Pond and the upcoming weeks following the FinCom meeting and the March 2nd meeting, public meeting for Warner's Pond. So I think the bridge has proven to be really, really valuable in helping people understand what's going on in their town. And certainly seems like everybody I meet has been reading it, and every place I go for coffee or lunch or wherever has copies all over the place. So I think we should use the bridge.
Thank you so much. John.
Do we have a meeting before town meeting with Delia? Or
Well,
a
we're
meeting
gonna
of
have
our,
to- I think we're gonna of necessity have to have a meeting. I have a new calendar, so I don't have the next meeting on my calendar, embarrassingly. And can you tell us when the next scheduled meeting is?
It's March 29th.
March 29th.
Oh, that's good.
Okay. Well, that gives us an amplitude of time before the town meeting to meet and discuss this.
I just want to correct a number. The actual funding for this project, which includes the permitting and the feasibility up front, which I think is fair game to include, is actually 825,000.
Yes.
So
Thank you for that correction. I appreciate it very much.
March 29th is a Wednesday. Is
Yeah, we
that-
don't usually have meetings on the Wednesday. The election, there's an election on the 28th. Is that the reason?
And actually, if I remember correctly, I think it's the same day as an NRC meeting, so that I don't know if that's going to pose a problem if we want Delia coming.
Sure would.
Maybe
there
we
some
should go
reason-
to your meeting.
Let me
Is there-
check on that, but I just remember, I know we overlap on one day.
Is there a reason we're not meeting the 28th?
I can't understand. As I said, it's
Yes,
a town election, so I don't, go ahead.
Right, March is packed full of all sorts of meetings, as you know, and I'm just learning. And also I have 3 committees that I serve, so I think the Thursday night is already taken by one of the other 2 committees.
Okay.
Actually, I misspoke. It's not NRC on the Wednesday. It's there's a big talk at the library, which will be on by Dr. Kagir on pollinator plants, which a lot of people might be interested in.
Oh,
Oh, dear. The choices we have to make in our modern lives are the riches of opportunities. Well, I think what we can convey to Delia is that we continue to have questions, going forward, and that the solidity of her research, the conclusions that her survey produces, the volume of engagement in the public hearing collectively, if it gives the NRC and Delia confidence that they have a clear understanding of how the town feels, then we can go forward, and their project can go forward with great confidence. I just want to make sure that her project and her approach is protected, and that she, and therefore we, but our embarrassment is nothing. I mean, we want to make sure she's okay, and that the project that she's trying to work on has been sufficiently researched and sufficiently reported. Does that make sense to everybody, or does that seem an excessive comment.
Oh, that seems right. I'm curious to know, would meeting on a Wednesday rather than Thursday be a no-brainer or a non-starter for committee members? For us?
No, we usually meet on Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Well, I'm
meant-
sorry.
yeah,
Tuesday.
meant
I'm
Tuesday.
sorry, I've got my committees upside down. But would it be, I have too many committees. Would that be a problem? for
The thing I
anybody?
can't understand is why we can't meet on Tuesday night. I know it's an election, but that doesn't mean we can't meet. Does it, Ann?
No, I think it does.
Oh,
We're prohibited from meeting on. election
Ah, on an election day. That's what I
Oh, okay.
figured. Okay,
Okay.
okay. so-
Oh, wow. Like that's an overwhelming duty.
Well, my question is, can we back it up to the 21st?
I can check and get back to you.
Would you check?
We're juggling a lot of different committees, as you know.
I understand very much, Ann, and
on
I,
March
what you don't
21st.
need is more pressure, but it would be, if the 21st could work, it would be a joy.
Okay.
Mm.
Okay. All right.
That's a good idea.
Other comments about the Warner's Pond? Paul?
Yeah, I think the $8 million gorilla in the room is what the cost of the project is going to be. And,
Mm.
that was a significant curveball, which is kind of set in motion a lot of things. And, the consultant is coming up with estimates, but it's not a bid. So, it's keeping our fingers crossed that whatever recommendation Dealey comes up with is, it's going to be, has some realistic cost estimates. Because if not, the project can't go forward.
That's exactly right.
And the other thing I'm curious whether anybody knows if Dealey is going to be applying for another $500,000 in this cycle. Her last application implied she was going to do that. And
I
I
think
don't know.
My understanding is she has to wait and see what the project's going to be. I mean, she doesn't know yet.
Well, she's not going to have enough, no matter what the project is, unless there's no action. I think it's going to require more funds than she has.
I think it's reasonable to assume.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so. So I think it's reasonable to assume that we'll see another application.
I would be surprised if we didn't under almost any circumstances.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Thank you.
So
okay.
Paul, it's interesting your observation about the need for an assessment when it's not a bid. That's a similar thing I was trying to ask for about Wright Tavern.
Right Tavern.
Because the cost, well, anyway, you would think there'd be an estimate out there.
Well, her consultant historically has been pretty good about, because they are consultants and they bid on projects, but with the market as it is, you just can't.
You can't always tell.
You don't know.
Yeah, it is crazy, but
Okay, other business moves us on to the Municipal Affordable Housing Trust Agreement and next steps. And what does this mean? Can you explain what that agenda item means?
Yes. So back when you all had decided to move the funds from the housing reserve to the Municipal Affordable Housing Trust, we realized that there would need to be an agreement between the CPC and the Municipal Affordable Housing Trust. And the state coalition, Community Preservation Coalition, has draft grant agreements for this sort of open relationship. So I also received, or you all received, an okay from Carrie LaFleur
Yes.
to check in with town council on what that relationship should be between CPC and the Municipal Affordable Housing Trust. I took the coalition's draft grant agreement and just plugged in, the words town of Concord, but it's really something that should be carefully thought through, of course, by town council, the trust, and yourselves. So I just wanted to, the time is running short, whether you want to do that before. I think you had said, back in the fall that you wanted to have this in place or some sense of it before the town meeting. So I just wanted to sort of have that reminder out there.
Hey, could you send us that information again, Anne, for people
Sure.
whose in mailboxes are overwhelmed?
Mhm.
by things,
I understand.
and therefore may not have hunkered onto this, and we can make it a major agenda item with the promise that we would carefully review it in advance of whenever we have our March meeting.
And
that-
should I send it to the trust as well? Or is that
Well,
up to you all to
I think we need to review it first,
first? Okay.
and then we can send it. I will tell you that on the 12th of April, there is a housing roundtable discussion to which the CPC has been invited to discuss, to have all the housing entities come together and talk about, kind of best practices and best ways to proceed. And so I will be there to represent us, barring getting hit by a truck. And so that should be that will be an interesting meeting, and I can bring back perspectives that emerge in that gathering. Paul and then John.
My question, I'm looking at the Article 28. Does Article 28 have to reference this agreement, subject to this agreement? Because there is a relationship between, getting this trust agreement in place and the warrant article. Is there not?
I think the articles have already been submitted, so it's too late to make that. Sort of
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that correct? You,
Yes, it is quite
Okay.
correct. We
Whatever.
mean that orally we cannot say something, Paul,
Yeah.
and about, the contingent upon blah, 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 blah. As
Right.
long as we have the right language down. And I will look to Anne for help on that one, so that we can say that in an appropriate way. John. And
I
then,
think that's my question, whether the agreement is necessary, especially if it comes after the fact of the vote. But if it is necessary, there has been a prior conversation way back when Bergman first started here, and I guess back when some of us were on the CPC and some not, about the relationship between the CPC and the Concord Affordable Housing Trust. It'll be interesting to look at this document as to whether it's just confirmation of the movement of the money, or does it contemplate some long-term relationship? Because that was the issue that was raised when the trust was first created. It may even been when I was chair and he came to me and said, we should have some ongoing written relationship about how your money flows to our money. So I'm only posing, when we look at this document, is it a one-time deal to move this money, or does it contemplate a longer term relationship?
so we have Keith on board. And Anne, can you respond to it first, and then we'll ask Keith and Charles?
Sure, I'll bring it up. Although I'll tell you now that it's been a few months since I looked at this, so I don't have the answer to right away.
While she's getting it, Charles, what is your comment?
Oh, it's simply that my impression of this is that, in a sense, this funding that we transfer to the trust has to be sequestered from the other funding, because there are limitations in terms of what the legally, any CPC funds can be spent for. That's what I see in that agreement. But the trust of other funds that perhaps have a broader application.
Okay.
So it looks as if it is just a one-time grant agreement, that it would be renewed every year, or whatever year you all decide to appropriate funding to the trust, similar to the other grant agreements.
Well, John, you have your hand up still. Do you want to comment on that? No.
No, we need to read it, and I only wanted to alert everyone to whether it was an explicit one-time agreement or contemplated some ongoing
Well, you know, Keith has,
financial relationship.
right, Keith has spoken to you. He's also spoken with me about the importance of having an ongoing relationship with the Affordable Housing Trust. And so Keith, you're here. Would you like to comment?
Sure, thanks very much. The agreement that you're working off of is and if I may, I'm just gonna, if I may, share my screen again. I want to tell you where it comes from. It comes from the Community Preservation Coalition website. And it's this sort of defines what this agreement is about, that where you have a housing trust and CPA funds, a grant agreement is a must. And that if you click the link to download the grant agreement, you get that the coalition recommends that you have basically the document that staff is working off of right now. I had forwarded this one to Diane some months ago, and I know that you've seen it. The trust has not reviewed the document in particular. It
Okay.
seems to read that it is for a specific appropriation
That was my understanding.
as opposed to an ongoing relationship. So there's that much.
You know, let me ask a question then in terms of process from all of us. I mean, it's one thing to have a formal arrangement for this particular issue. But is it not enough to say as a committee that we would always work hand in glove with both the Concord Housing Authority as well as the Housing Trust Fund, that we have in common a collective commitment to affordable housing in our community. And that for that reason, of course, we would be, we would always be, I don't mean deferential to each other, but we would be attentive to each other and work collaboratively to the best we can, the limits of our resources, other demands on it, to the limits of the other organizations' exterior needs as they see them. Does that statement make sense to people, or is it?
Yeah.
Keith
Sure.
says yes. Paul, I
they-
see a little skepticism in your face.
May not be sufficient.
I agree with it. I'm just thinking about Charles's comment about the specific transfer of funds and whether that has to be sequestered. I agree with your statement, Diane, but my face was contemplating how, we didn't give Charles an answer whether this particular movement of funds had to be segregated and accounted for, and
Well,
the CPC require that.
That's just my invention.
No, it's a good question.
It's,
I invent a lot of things too, so that's okay.
It just says that those funds can only be used in ways that are authorized by the Community Preservation Act itself, and that by itself is a small, maybe small limitation perhaps on how the trust funds are used. That's all. They gave an example that they can't be used to renovate housing.
Right.
But other funds that the trust has can be used to renovate funding.
Right.
So that's all it is.
Well, it comes right out of the Junction Village money. So, which had a very clear purpose, did it not? Which is to create more affordable housing. In that case, it was a very different kind of affordable housing than seems to be being imagined right now in that space. Keith?
Yeah, I think that the answer would be with the way the article is written, with the transfer of the funds to the trust could only spend those monies, that 1,044,000 and change, on projects that are eligible under the Community Preservation Act.
Right.
And what I think, and moreover, that the coalition has a procedure of reporting. There's a form that's used on which the Affordable Housing Trust is to notify the CPC of how the funds are used. But I think this is where the relationship issue comes in more. It's not that we I think there needs to be a genuine partnership if the trust is being entrusted with CPC funds because we can take action without having to wait for a town meeting. We ought to be in lockstep about how those monies are to be spent, and whether that's by, meeting periodically, having a priority plan of in any given year, let's say, since we're talking about a long-term relationship. This year, the priorities are, might be Assabet and Junction Village or something else, but that needs to be renewed, and the community, all of the housing groups, including CPC, need to be on the same page of what the priorities are, and that's a sort of relationship issue that I hope we could address through, in the coming days.
You couldn't say it better, Keith. Thank you so much. And I think that's very much whether we have to formalize that or codify that. I would turn to someone, to John. I mean, whether we think we have to codify this or whether we do it just by each project in each country, each transferring of funds. But I think we can certainly say in spirit, and this is a formal meeting, and therefore it has been said. And we would count on being able to meet with Keith and the Concord Housing Authority and other organizations in town that are attentive to the needs of affordable housing, because we're seeing that need so dramatically right now. And if you look at the Best Western situation, we realize that there are families that have desperate needs. And we have added 5 affordable housing stocks in the last couple of years, and that's not enough. We have to do something, and we're part of that covenant, and we're part of that ongoing effort. So, and I think speak for all of us when I speak to that. So, is there any other new business? And I want to ask Linda Escobedo. Linda and Dee, do you have any comments for us about what we've done or what we've talked about? Hi, Linda.
Hi. So I think that you've just had a very good conversation about this. I would just encourage when there's a document like this is circulated, even at this early stage, that it be watermarked with draft all over it, that the source of it be identified, and the wonderful verbal comments that Anne made in terms of she just, for illustration purposes, plugged in Concord and so forth, that could quickly be noted as well. And she also commented that this had not yet been reviewed by our own legal counsel, which will be necessary at some point. Keith did appropriately comment on the reporting format that CPC requires. And in fact, I think if I recall correctly, it's actually in the bylaws of the trust that should there be CPC money, we need to align with that reporting. So
terrific. I didn't realize that. That's helpful.
It's either there or it's in one of our documents. I can't pull it up at the moment. But yeah, those would be my comments on that. But other than that, a very good conversation.
Thank you so much, Dee.
Yeah, thank you. A couple of comments. I hear what you're saying about affordable housing and the need for a closer collaboration with all the various areas within or organizations associated with affordable housing. But I do caution, or would just like to throw out, that we do have 2 other funds, historical preservation, and the other one is open space, and that if we're doing a collaborative effort with one, we should be doing it with all 3. where you have all the time in the world, you know. Your schedules are not full at all, but it just seems as though I would like to see that I would suggest that there be a balance with all three.
Right. Thank you very much. And who would you recommend would represent historical preservation with whom we could meet?
Well, there are various groups, right?
Mhm.
Within historic preservation. Nancy, you probably can list them all, you know? But it
Yeah.
just seems to me that, I don't know, maybe it wouldn't be appropriate, but it seems to me that if historic preservation, if we have to fund it, why shouldn't we be looking at it collaboratively in terms of having that group of organizations associated with historic preservation get together? And the same with recreation. It might be the rec committee, but it might also be various groups within the schools.
Could also be people who are interested in open space and they're interested in.
Excuse me,
trails.
open space and recreation.
Yes, I mean,
Recreation.
open space is actually the category, open space and recreation. So I mean, I
Right.
think it's really a broader category than that. Well, it's really, I know Anne will capture this in the minutes, and it's something we should be thinking about for next year. As we go forward in the fall, perhaps over the summer, find times to meet with other organizations and solicit their insights or their thinking.
It's an interesting idea, really, and I'm gonna have to think about that some more.
Yeah, I think that's,
Historic preservation, it's something I'm kind of having an issue related to that right now, but so. Yeah, interesting idea.
so thank you, Dee, for that very good advice.
And the finance committee looks forward to seeing, I hope all of you can attend
What,
the meeting.
can you
We-
remind us?
Oh, it is March 2nd, is it? Let me just look here.
Well, that's exactly the same day. that-
March 1st, March.
March 1st. March 1st is the public hearing, and it's
Right.
going to be in the townhouse.
Right.
And I only say that because the finance committee had a meeting with the school committee and this past week. And it was probably one of the best meetings that I've attended all year in terms of all the meetings you go to, because we never see the school committee members. We usually see the superintendent and the fellow in charge of finance. And it was just a good communication. It was just a good interaction with the real decision makers, because it is the school committee that makes a decision for their budget.
Right.
And I think it would be if people can attend, for the people on the CPC also to be able to participate at our meeting, at the hearing.
That would be wonderful.
What time?
Okay,
It starts at 7 o'clock and it's both for the town budget as well as the CPC. And it's 7 PM in the townhouse.
in the townhouse.
Yeah. So, and I don't know who goes on first. I really don't.
I don't think I do. I think it's the town that goes first, but
But
Okay.
you could always ask. You could always ask.
You could always ask too, right?
Yeah, you can ask, Diane.
I can ask to go first.
Yes,
You could. Why not?
we,
Do I want to go first, John, or do I want to watch somebody else struggle before I have to get up there?
well, then we could,
Oh,
we could do
I
some other
think
things
yours
that
might be
night.
shorter. I think yours might be shorter.
We will,
well, I will see if I can influence the people planning this. Is it Peggy I should talk to? Briggs?
Try Peggy, yes. Maybe I'll also talk to Carrie, see what she thinks.
Well, is Peggy even going to be there then she's.
Peggy may not be there. I'm not
She's
sure.
Going to be
I'm
there. I
not
don't
sure.
think. Her daughter's getting married, so I don't think she's going to even be there. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Right.
Well, thank you all.
Okay.
May I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you. Do I
Second.
hear a second? Thank you.
second,
And I think we've learned, all we have to do is hearing no objection to doing so. Thank you all.
Thank you.
And I hope I see you on March 1st. And if not, we will see each other on perhaps the 21st for our next meeting. So please remember to review the document that we saw briefly. Okay, thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Good night.
Diane.
Bye-bye.
Bye,
Good
everyone.
night.